An empty chair in the White House proclaimed the fact that the problems, the attempts to find solutions, and the final answers continue on a 24-hour basis, no matter where the chief executive may be. This had been made possible through the increased mobility afforded the man who holds the helm. When he travels, the president virtually takes the White House with him. An elaborate communication system keeps him in constant touch with any of a host of carefully selected advisors and department heads. On 11 July, the first family returns to Washington, and for a brief time would conduct business from the main store on 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. For his daughter Lucy and her fiancé Pat Nugent, it would be the beginning of a whirlwind of prenuptial activities, ranging from intimate bridal showers to huge red carpet receptions. For Lucy's father, it would be the beginning of a busy summer keyed to talking with the American people face to face across the land, explaining and defining his administration's policies, and principally the nation's current role in the Pacific. But first, there was a bit of business at the Pentagon. On 12 July, the president personally commended 17 cost-conscious defense officials, each of whom contributed immeasurably to trimming $4.5 billion from the defense budget during the past fiscal year.
The record that you have achieved in your part of the government's cost reduction program, in my judgment, is without equal. And every department of this government today is attempting to imitate and to emulate what you have done, and is a record that you and your family can be very proud of. If I would leave no other thought with you this morning than this one, I would say that every person within the sound of my voice and every employee of the Defense Department, in uniform and out, civilian or military, can take great pride in saying, I was a part of the Department of Defense in the 60s. And that is a record that you can point to with pride and that your children and grandchildren will take great pride in.
The same day, the president was scheduled to speak to the American Alumni Council in White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia, but his flight was canceled because of weather. From the White House Theater on nationwide television, he delivered his address to the council, laying out the essentials for a lasting peace not only in Vietnam, but throughout the entire Asian community. And again, the president stressed the importance of building political and economic strength among those nations as one of the foundations for a lasting peace. The Coast and Geodetic ship, the Oceanographer, is the latest deep-sea research vehicle to come down the waves. Lending his personal support, as well as official impetus, to the advancement of marine technology, the president attended the commissioning, and at the same time invited 11 nations having interest in the sea, including the Soviet Union, to share in the first round-the-world cruise of the Oceanographer. The men who sail before the mast have come a long way in their quest for better working conditions, berthing, and shipboard food, but it's doubtful that elaborate creations such as this will grace many mess deck tables on the Oceanographer's maiden voyage. But underneath the papier-mâché and frosting that traditionally adorns a ship commissioning lies a serious commitment by the United States to a better understanding of the sea that divides and yet unites mankind. For it's here that an untapped reservoir of natural wealth, both food and mineral, lies waiting for the science and technology that will ultimately conduct the harvest. Part of that technology, in the gleaming white hull of the Oceanographer, will soon set sail, only one of an ever-growing fleet of 115 federal research vessels. One of the ablest supporters of United States policy in Southeast Asia, partner in the development programs for the peoples of the Pacific, Prime Minister Holt of Australia returns to the White House as ally, as friend. He would, during a toast at a luncheon in his honor the following day, symbolically refer to his friendship for the United States as one similar to the famous Aesop fable, The Lion and the Mouse. Only in his case, it would be more accurate to describe it as the lion and the kangaroo. The Secretary of the Navy's yacht Sequoia is a waterborne retreat for the Chief Executive. On trips like these down the quiet Potomac, the Sequoia becomes yet another extension of the White House, a very private extension where peace and relaxation are the order of the day. Discussions will continue, but the pace is less hurried, the talks informal. The President repeated to the Prime Minister the ideas he had recently conveyed to the people of America's obligations in the Pacific. On July 15, William J. Hopkins was honored by the President for 23 years of the highest possible service as Executive Clerk of the White House. 23 years that spanned the New Deal, the Fair Deal, the New Frontier, and the Great Society.
This is a profoundly symbolic occasion, for in honoring Mr. Hopkins, we also honor the whole corps of dedicated civil servants of which he is so outstanding an example. I have said on many occasions that I believe our country has developed the finest professional civil service in the history of the world. And as President, I have not merely expressed that opinion as idle words, I have acted upon it.
3 days later, the President would again act upon this conviction. On 18 July, he put his pen to the Federal Salary and Fringe Benefits Act of 1966, observing that the country was in a period of economic prosperity unequaled in its history. On the lighter side of the White House scene, Lucy was entertained by the distaff corps of the press. Grateful for many prenuptial interviews, and perhaps to make up for the many moments of stolen privacy, the journalist staged the skit for the bride-to-be and her mother. One news item that would remain private, however, was the location of the honeymoon. Lucy refused to disclose the secret destination, but offered to let a dart do her talking for her. If her aim was accurate, only the first family knew. Mrs. Johnson relieved the President of any responsibility in handling the many details of the wedding, now soon approaching. And in a press conference the following day, the President took refuge in this fact. Fairchild newspapers found their press credentials to cover the wedding withdrawn, because they had ignored a release date on a news story concerning Lucy's bridal gown. Challenging the President with denying freedom to the press, the Fairchild representative was apprised of the Chief Executive's positive stand on this issue.
But if I could have your permission to just step aside. on any of the detailed waiting arrangements. I would like very much to do so. Thank you very much.
There were other issues during the month of July, however, on which the President had no prerogative to step aside. On 19 July, he met with congressional leaders to discuss the impact of appropriation increases on the budget. Having just wrapped up a fiscal year with the lowest deficit since 1960, in spite of an ever-increasing cost of war, the President was determined to keep federal spending in the upcoming months in line. Knowing that the budget can be a delicately balanced seesaw, the chief executive discouraged any additional expenditures or add-ons in an effort to hold the line on the inflationary pressures being felt throughout the economy. The President, as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, had repeatedly expressed his pride in the men who were actively serving in Southeast Asia. And now, without publicity or fanfare, he tried to convey this feeling to some of the men who had fought in Vietnam and who had come back home bearing the physical scars of war. On deck for this impromptu presidential boarding party were 500 enlisted men, most of them wounded veterans from the conflict in Asia. The Secretary of Defense had sponsored this summer outing on the Potomac, inviting soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen from all of the area service hospitals. Here, among these men who had given far more than most of their countrymen, who above all other people could be expected to weigh seriously the cost of war in terms of its toll on human life, came reassuring words and full support for the job the President was trying to do. It was late afternoon on the 20th of July when the President, speaking for the entire nation, said goodbye to 3,000 exchange students who had completed a year of study in the United States.
When countries speak of sending volunteers into other lands, let them be sent to the real battlefields, the battlefields of poverty and ignorance and disease and suffering. Let them come bearing hope and not arms. Let them cross the frontiers in the bright light of day and not down the jungle trails in the dark of night. Let them volunteer to enlarge the lives of their neighbors, not to take the lives of anyone. This is the kind of volunteers that America understands. It's the only kind that the world needs or wants. And I promise you that wherever such a volunteer may walk, he will find an American among the first to give him welcome and to take his hand and to join him in his work for peace.